Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, John Knocklinger. I'm a men's divorce coach and a New Jersey divorce attorney and mediator. Today, we're going to learn how to live intentionally instead of by chance and to upgrade your life. My guest for this conversation is Kimberley Mansfield. She is a divorce and family law attorney that took a step back from being a trial attorney to help coach people through divorce and custody disputes, something I can definitely relate to. She helps clients transform desperation, angst, and overwhelm into competence, confidence, and credibility through skilled clarity. Thank you for being here today, Kimberley.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is great, John.
My pleasure. So as a fellow divorce and family law attorney that did not want to, continue that trial attorney life, but still wants to help people, I can certainly relate to what you're doing. And I took a very similar path to divorce coaching as well. So the first question I have for anyone that comes on that's a coach is, I kind of want to know, what does being a coach mean to you, Kimberley? When you use the word coach, what is it that you're meaning or you're trying to convey to the public?
I love that you asked for that clarification because I hate that word. I just hate the word coach. Like I only default to using it because I know people kind of know, what a coach is because we use it in every other context. But I gotta say that I don't like that word. I think the coaching part is more of a tool within what we do, because we do a lot of teaching, a lot of mentoring, a lot of guidance, a lot of and some of it is coaching. And to me, the coaching aspect, the coaching tool, is the insight work, like getting into having the personal insights come up in the person. It often happens through questions instead of statements and that. But in ours, because we're in such a procedural field, clearly there's a lot of teaching and training, whatever you want to call it. I think also because I'm in this so individuals can get further faster without losing substance. Because the fact is, if you're in a case or been around a case or anticipating a case, then you're on a clock. You're on the court's clock. So the things that, and I do private coaching that's outside of the divorce custody stuff. And some of it is just organic on its own, upgrading life for the rest of your life, right? But some of it is that individuals have gone through the divorce custody process and they see how transferable all these skills are, and then they take it out into their life so they may continue thereafter. So, but where we're talking about there's a clock, I just feel like what my clients and I have earned and learned in the trenches, that leaves me with a duty to help people shorten the curve. And there's so much angst and there's so much overwhelm and there's so much powerlessness. And I would argue, I believe you would too, that not all of that is necessary, that there's a different way to come at things, to approach things. And so that's why I do it. There's too much angst, quite frankly, on both sides of the desk. So first of all, I'm going to put it right out there. I don't sugarcoat stuff. I give the hard truths up front. And for people that have the backbone, bring the backbone to the table to benefit from those things, they will get further faster. And with people who are determined and committed, those are the people that I work with. If individuals can't look in the mirror, then we're probably not a fit, because they will flounder longer, unfortunately, to their own detriment. Not just to the detriment, if you're getting even with the other side, but to their own health and well-being will suffer along the way. And if there's kids involved, then that trickles right down. But if people really want to dig in and do the work, then it's a matter of finding where the opportunities are within that person and kind of the personal entry point. So everything is very customized when I work with a client because everybody's different. The one thing that never changes is that those skills are transferable to life. And some of my coolest emails and cards and things that I've gotten back are people who have gone, I'll hear from them after a hearing that we've prepped for, and they know what to say and how to say it and what not to say, and how to present themselves and show up really in peak presence. And then I hear from a few days later, they're like, yeah, the hearing went great. The judge was awesome. It was unprecedented, like what happened, how it went down, all this. But you know what? I went to work the next day and I was doing the same stuff there. And that they are probably more shocked, I think, with the results outside of the realm that it was practiced in than in the realm where they were hoping to get the result. And that is the coolest thing ever, because that's where lives are upgraded for the rest of life.
Yeah.
So
that really, I mean, that's all very amazing. I think what concerns or what confuses people when they're looking at a coach or someone to help them through something like divorce, and we're talking about divorce right now, is some of what you just talked about, helping prepare someone for a hearing. Someone might hear that and be like, isn't that what an attorney's supposed to be doing? And a lot of people have a confusion about sort of where the line is of what you need an attorney for, what you need a coach for. If someone comes to you and says, well, I have an attorney, why do I need a coach? How do you respond to them?
Oh man, because misuse of attorneys is the most costly thing, unnecessary cost that I think clients do. They're asking their attorney to be a therapist, a hand holder, a counselor, all those things. And we are a counselor by trade, but we are not therapists. You need an attorney for the procedural prowess, because this is a procedural realm, and there are rules, there are laws, there is case law, there are different rules by jurisdiction, by county, by all that, depending on where you're at. It's a lot. And sometimes that can really bite you, where. So, and as far as drafting and as far as knowing that you're showing up in the right light. Now, some attorneys, I had a very coachy, in my initial intake with clients, or even screening before I would hire clients, because that's a two-way street, right? Is that I would talk to clients and say, look, I come from a coachy background. I've been coaching for over 20 years. So this is going to be very coachy. Are you willing to grow in these ways while we walk through this? Because I was both lawyer and coach. And if that was not a fit for them, or I felt like it wasn't a fit, even if I asked them on a scale of 1 to 10, how coachable do you think they are? And they're like, oh, I'm an 8. If I did not get that impression in the meeting, then it just wasn't a fit. And I'm not going to go down that road. I'm not. In fact, most attorneys are not in this to just eke out every single nickel and dime that we can. I abide by that. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. I'm not going to file everything under the sun if we can get the same place a different direction. So the difference being, one, if we are advising people, coaching people in our own jurisdiction, obviously we can get super hyper legal on things as well. So they're getting both that. And these are, not everybody fits the bill. I ask people and I size them up. I have a 30-minute conversation, and I can, whether they meet my criteria first, which is, do they have the wherewithal? Do they seem to have the capacity? Do they seem self-regulated? Are they able to be the boots on the ground for the filing, for the showing up? Are they taking notes? Big red flag for me. If people aren't taking notes and they're asking me the same question 3 times, might not be a fit for the coach slash attorney role. Meaning not having a separate attorney on board. The difference of this, I think a distinction that's important, is if we come alongside where we're just coaching and they have their own attorney, then we really take on a different role. There's a lot of expectation management, which attorneys do as well. But on the emotional realm, how do we grow from this? How do we show up? How do we self-regulate? How can they save money on their attorney, quite frankly? The unnecessary costs and I'm going to hit on it in a second because it's my big credo, is the unnecessary cost that in emotional narrative that's included in transacting communications with your attorney. Oh man, I worked with, I did a beta group with like 6 women they were all in New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut. And 3 of them were in the midst of cases. One was about 1.5 years in, one was about 3 years in. I don't remember where the other, I think that was just getting filed, and the others were contemplating. So, and I remember the look wash over somebody's face as we started working through the communication part and stripping out the emotional narrative. And she just hands to face and like, oh my gosh, the tens of thousands, literally tens of thousands of dollars she could have saved at that point from stripping out that emotional narrative out of her communications with her own attorney. Because at the same time, I'm saying, look, you need to get a counselor or have a coach or whatever. I can't afford counseling. I'm paying my attorney. It's like, if you weren't doing these things with your attorney, you would have money in the bank after you paid for your counselor. And it was mind blowing. And as soon as she changed the way she was communicating with her attorney, it changed her relationship with her attorney.
Yeah.
So if you want the best out of your attorney or you want the best attorney, I'm telling you, be the best client. Mm-hmm. Because when we get those arm's length emails, we know straight off how our clients are going to communicate over time. And that is not an email from my other clients who I know send me short, succinct, bulleted emails. And if I have 10 minutes, I can hop on, bounce this back and get it off to them. And then the people who I know that I'm going to have to schedule in my calendar time to read their email and try to tease apart, is there a question in here? It's like, where's Waldo with the question? Because there's so much emotional narrative. And then I'm kind of guessing, well, is this what you're asking? Or was that what you're asking? And then we get in this back and forth. And when you hear this, people, you got to be hearing cha-ching, cha-ching.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Unnecessarily.
I love is how you came to divorce coach. And I know you do coach other things as well, but divorce coaching after you had been a divorce attorney. I think you're the only other divorce coach that I've come in contact with that has the same background that I have, which is an interesting one where you can really understand the dynamic between the client and the attorney because you are an attorney, but you're coming at it from a very different standpoint, and you're able to really address all those areas that as an attorney, you have to be careful on how much you address because of the cost that it is to the client. I joke very frequently when I was a young attorney. I had in the office a cordless phone, and I had this client that every time I had a phone call with him, every time he told me the exact same story. And I got to the point where I would put the phone on mute. I would go get coffee. I would sometimes walk around the building. And I told him every time, I will listen to your story again, but you're being charged. Do you understand? Yes, but I just need to tell you that, there's something I didn't tell you last time. Inevitably, right. It's the same story. And I started thinking about that guy and how he desperately needed coaching. He desperately needed somebody to help him separate what I think is 95% of divorce is emotion, 5% is everything else. To take that 95% and to figure out how to refocus it in a healthier way and to actually get out of his own way. Because as you were just pointing out, he ended up the divorce took 5 times longer than it needed to because he couldn't get past his own emotions about the why he was getting divorced, that one little part. So I just think it's amazing what you're doing. I obviously am a big proponent of coaching, but I think you're coming at it in a very unique way. You're sort of setting people up for a lifetime of really exceeding their own expectations and really creating a really nice life for themselves. So how do you take someone that's going through a divorce and maybe is a shell of themselves, they're scared about their future, they're scared about what's happening, maybe the legal system, they're scared about not having enough money, all the things people are scared of going through divorce. How do you get them to actually see past all of that and actually start looking at what life is going to look like after divorce, so you can help them be the best version of themselves?
I start out of the gate, like I said before, I tell people up front, I'm a coach. I include that part about you're going to get straight talk. Attorneys and coaches don't get paid to tell you what you want to hear. One, as a attorney, I am your tether to legal reality. And then as a coach, I'm a tether to everything else. So just know that if they're still nodding along and getting it, one, I always look for the reactions when people start to be taken aback. If they're not eating up moving forward with these things, I don't want to put someone down this road where we will get in. And I'm like you, I've gotten in those things so many times where individuals, the same stories over and over, and I will stay straight to them. I'm trying to cut you off because I am not comfortable spending your money going around this block again. And to me, I've learned over time, I imagine you have too, that these are the individuals who dispute their invoices at the end of the month. These are the individuals who may trot off and file a bar complaint. They're like, I couldn't be heard. I wasn't listened to. So I paper those files. Every time I get off, I make a notes all the way contemporaneously with the meeting, like what's going on, how many times I have to repeat things. I put in their invoices, repeat, explained, blah, 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 repeat, explained, blah, blah. I put it in their invoices because the easiest thing for me to hand the bar or the client are the invoices. So it's a start with, are you coachable? Are you open to this? And how bad do you want it? What people don't understand, and I think usually is a huge relief, is that the divorce custody process is the opportunity of a lifetime. They don't look at this as an opportunity, like in and of itself, as a personal opportunity. It's the opportunity of a lifetime to upgrade your life for the rest of your life. And here's the thing. If we have kiddos involved, never, ever, ever will parents have a better opportunity to make a bigger impression on the kiddos, and never, ever will they have the opportunity to make a better impression on the kiddos, because there is a rearranging of the two parts of that kid going on, because kids conceive of themselves as half of each parent. So when you're separating households, you're sort of bifurcating the child. They can't articulate this. Even kids who are aging out at 18 or whatever, they can't articulate these things. It's a lived experience for them. But how do you want that to go? What example do you want to set? You will never have a bigger time to set example on how to self-regulate during disappointments, during relationships changing, during households changing, during what could be financially bumpy. Because it includes both halves of the child, you will never, ever have this big of opportunity again. So how do we capitalize on that? Here's the hard part for a lot of people, where the tough loving comes in, is when I tell them, like, look, your emotions are costing you a fortune. They're costing you a fortune, and they're eroding your credibility and your case. And credibility is currency. Don't squander it. Well, what's credibility? First, let me just say everyone's entitled to their emotions. Totally natural, normal human thing. At no point do I want to diminish or dismiss an individual's emotions, because I would expect them to be here. What people most don't understand is you can exist self-regulated alongside the emotions. All that emotional stuff can be turned into feedback and information, data. But you can exist self-regulated alongside that. And I am a tremendous neuroscience geek. So neuroscience, quantum biology, family dynamics, psychoneuroimmunology, epigenetics, functional, everything like that. That is my home. So any conversation really is going to come from a basis of circuitry, chemistry, and linguistics. Circuitry being, all the wiring that's in us, right? The neurons in our brain, which we know we can rearrange and reshape. The chemistry, the neurochemistry, the coursing through the stress hormones, the calm hormones, that all of these things, we're at the mercy of these things. And linguistics is so huge because our talk, our communication, whether it's externally with other people or with ourselves internally, affects both the circuitry and the chemistry so much. We're just an animal at the end of the day. And the person on the other side of the case or the other side of the desk, maybe our own attorney or the judge, they're an animal too. So all of us are running this circuitry and this chemistry and this linguistics. So where are the inroads that we can dial some of these things down? That we can take the emotions, put them in the passenger seat, stay in the driver's seat, and improve how we show up, how we communicate. That credibility goes out the door on the emotions. And that sometimes the fastest thing, and this is a personal thing, when I start out with people, it's like, let's find the opportunities and the points of entry, like the lowest hanging fruit first. If we can just get a little bit of momentum going, again, transferable skills, they radiate outwards. It's like a ripple in a pond. Then we can move our way, up. It's like going to the gym, right? Repetition, you start out a little bit. It's like the stock market. It's the aggregation of marginal gains. I mean, all of these things, the principle applies here just as much. So if we can get a little bit of traction and they can start tasting it a little bit, what the difference of an exercise, for instance, I had a brilliant client and she had been in a protracted custody. They had a custody parenting coordinator involved. They were bicoastal at this point and 7 years with a parenting coordinator. I'll let people just imagine the math on that. So it was very high tension and all of this. So, but at some point during the case, she said to me, she goes, and she was pretty good on the communication front. She said, but how do I make sure I'm not contributing to this? I mean, I try really hard, but I know this isn't, my deal. And she's educated. She's a professional. Again, she was ahead of the pack and she still asked the right question. How do I minimize or stop my contribution? So what we started doing as an exercise is before she would send an email to dad, or before she would answer an email from dad, she would write a response and she would send it to me and I would look through it. We would pick through it together and just rearrange some words, take certain inflammatory words out. And again, these are not categorically inflammatory words. Only in the context of these relationships are these inflammatory words. And we would rearrange them and do them. And then she started using it kind of as a schematic, right? A template almost in the communications. And I would get back these brilliant emails and texts from her and forwarding me text messages back from him that everything ratcheted down. And she's like, this is unprecedented. How did my parenting coordinator never say this to me? How was this not part of the process I've been paying for 7 years? We can never change, command, control how the other person's going to be. But as animals, we can not feed into things. So changing wording. I wrote down a list I was thinking of things that are like red flags, inflammatory. They're inflammatory to the other side. Their judges don't like them. They erode credibility. They stir up the wrong chemistry and circuitry in the individual saying them or even thinking them. Things like don't go into court and start wielding clinical terms unless you're a clinician. So I'm talking narcissist. That's such a buzzword right now, but that's a clinical diagnosis. So is bipolar. So is anxiety. I mean, to say someone is anxious and hear the ways, what makes you say that, these specific instances, that's different than saying they have anxiety. Unless they are, unless they have a diagnosis, I suppose. Same with depression. Same with saying, it's an alcoholic. Well, is it that, or does he abuse alcohol to the extent of intoxication, impairment? They're little things. Ban the F word. Fair. There's not a law in the state, in the domestic relations realm, that is based on fairness. They're based on equity. They're based on best interests of the children. They're based on lots of things. Fairness isn't one of them, and judges hate it. Yeah. And I've stood there a million times listening to judges school client, one side or the other on using that word, using globalizations, always, never, nothing, everything, because that's just not possible. Yeah. Those are impossibilities. Veracity comments, they're lying. They perjured themselves. That's a technical term. So, let's not go there. Oh my gosh. And this is so apparently in vogue right now. Drives me nuts. And it's terrible for credibility. Honestly, well, to be honest, if I'm being honest, I'm not going to lie to you. It's like all that's going on in the other mind is, what are you the rest of the time?
Yeah. That's definitely the case.
I hear it all the time. It's like nails on a chalkboard to me. So mine about the children. Oh my gosh, not using our child, mine, my daughter, my son, I'm not going to get, or I'm not going to give the other parent time, or I don't want to give them child support. Child support belongs to the child. That's why it's called child support. What judges hear and what's going on is the adult stuff, right? If you listen to things or write them down and listen to the thoughts in your head. You can usually, by your own doing, figure out, is that the adult acrimony? Or is this honestly about the child at the center, or the issue at the center, or the matter at the center? I mean, a super simple eye-opening exercise for lots of clients. I'm like, look, we're just going to go through sort of a body sense thing. Take a breath, sit here for a second. Now, how do these things land on you? You walked in saying you have a custody battle. It's like, okay, how do we gear up for a battle? We got to get the tanks, the troops, the grenades, the allies, the ammunition. Oh, so if you came here saying, I'm going to in a family transition, what do we gear up for that? Two different things. The body hears it differently. It lands differently. The chemistry is differently. We are more resourceful when we're gearing up for a family transition, because here's the thing. If you say, I'm in a custody battle, you will get a battle. Yeah. I mean, we will look for everything. The mind just sucks that up, whatever we tell it. So we'll just go looking for all the things that need to be battle worthy, battle ready. They're the battle. We're in a battle. We're in a battle. If you tell your mind different things, it can see different things. You're more resource, the creativity, let's lower the heart rate and the cortisol a little, right? I mean, the health and well-being is important here. Saying things in any regard like baby mama, baby daddy, that's trouble territory. That just shouldn't exist.
Yeah. Well, I think that attorneys do cause problems a lot of times with all of this, because they're not there to be coaches, and they don't want to take on that role. So they just basically end up doing whatever their clients want, and using a lot of these words that are inflammatory, like you were just talking about, in letters, because that's what their clients want them to do. And they're not telling their clients no. And so they, you would hope attorneys are just ignorant to it for the most part, but they end up exacerbating all of these issues by, submitting certifications and affidavits to the court that contain all kinds of inflammatory things that are irrelevant to the issues before the court. I mean, you see that all the time. There's something about money, and someone will spend 5 pages talking about how horrible someone was for the last 5 years, and it has nothing to do with money. And, and a lot of that's because the client wants it. The attorney doesn't say no. And so basically what I'm hearing you say is that if you're going through a divorce, really, if you have someone that's helping you work through these things, work through the emotions of what you're going through, you won't feel the need to have your attorney write those letters, write those certifications. And by not doing that, you're going to help yourself in a lot of different ways. Number one, if you've got kids, you were just talking about this. Actually, I was just thinking about how many fewer parenting coordinators there might need to be if both parties had their own divorce coach helping them work through things. It just occurred to me. I don't even know.
Yeah, I'd love to see a study on that.
Yeah, because project. Why would you even need a parenting coordinator? I mean, that's really the role of a parenting coordinator. Although I don't know about you, I don't really see a ton that are excellent at their job.
And I would never want to. I don't want to be the czar in the middle. Oh
no. It's hard,
I can't think of anything worse.
But I mean, really, even if it's as simple as, because I mean, really at its core, everything you're saying, if you're listening to this, you should see all the ways you would benefit from having somebody to help you through this process that's not your attorney. It should be very obvious to you, listening all the things that you're going through. It could be as simple as the why is this happening to me question that people start with, to just the fear, to just the raw emotions you're going through. I love what you were just talking about a second ago about sanitizing. That's what I call it anyway. Sanitizing an email or a text message that's going to the other parent, just to take out things that you are so close to. It's so close to you because it's your life that you can't even see whether what you're saying is going to get the other person going. Because what's the one thing we all can do really well? Our spouses, we know how to get under their skin. Like that's
we are button pushers.
Yeah, right. But Kimberly, I really want to focus in on one thing because it's a question I get all the time. When do you get a coach involved? So you've been talking, I've heard a lot of the things you've been talking about are about people that have been in the middle of like really bad disputes, and it's been going on for years and years. Obviously, I think the easy answer is before you start the divorce process, get a coach involved, and you might end up not being in the process as long. But when do you think people should get involved, or what are some of the signs that you would benefit from getting involved at that point? Maybe even before you get an attorney involved.
Yeah, I agree. I think before the earliest, I think there's a knowledge thing that individuals don't know. The first thing they think is lawyer, and usually that's really intimidating to them to even the thought. And I'm sure you get the calls too that end up being last minute. I'm like, look, this has been, how long have you been at it? And then like, they were just so intimidated to reach out or figure out how to get the input. I don't know how to pull that away from them. I think that a coach, if they knew that coaches existed before that a coach could help, figure that out and soften that so it is less intimidating. I think that certainly if you're to that point of knowing things are going sideways and anticipating that either it needs to be a divorce or that you're unmarried parents and you need to establish custody, which for the record, I think should always be established. Everything's going swell until it's not. So that just should be. But I think as soon as you suspect things might be going, now, if I could drag it back farther, I would almost be into that. We'll just get a coach in general. Yeah. And then if that happens, like even for people like my client who really, she was really in a good position herself personally. Her preparedness, she's super sharp. She was very self-regulated and all this. And yet she still wanted those inputs because here's the thing. It feels crappy. It just feels crappy, right? Do you want to stop feeling crappy? And I think the real way to do that is with a coach. I think there might be a piece of crappy you stop feeling when you get the attorney and they're dealing with the paper pushing and the dotting I's and crossing T's in the court and all that, if you go that route. But that's not really, legal solutions, legal inner workings are very unemotionally satisfying. Yeah. So I understand that unloads part of it, but it's not, the person is not being personally ratcheted up through the process. Yeah. I'm just a person that, look, life has ups and downs. We're all going to be disappointed. Things are not going to work out. Things are going to be great one day and they're going to be stinky the next day. And all the bottom line, you're either a victim or you're extracting all the growth possible from it. It's one of two. You can choose either. I can't wrestle it away from you. I encourage people to get the growth out of it because being a victim is a really unfortunate and compromising place to be on the health and well-being thing. And I think people need permission. Wait, there's another way to do it? Yeah, there is. There absolutely is.
Well, it's just not what we've been taught, Kimberly.
No, I think a huge part, and I usually wrap up talks and I'm doing with like a big thing I think we need to do is we need to normalize the coaching or whatever you want to call it, guidance, training, teaching, legal guide by your side. But we need to normalize that. Look, we have baseball coaches for our kids. We have a golf pro at the club. We, for that matter, we get financial advisors, same thing. Right? We get plumbers, we get mechanics. It's really the same principle. We do all these things. These are very normal to us. Why is this any different? And it shouldn't be any different. And if you're serious about feeling better about the process, not being the victim, reaping what you can, and that doesn't always mean things end up precisely how you wished at the end, you can still be the beneficiary of this. And at the end of all this, you still will be a better example for the kiddos. I know not everybody has kiddos, and I get that that's part of it, but your health and well-being directly, affects kiddos. And that example you're setting for their life down the road, how do you want them to walk through the process like you are or like you are learning to be? How do you want to do this? There's a thing, and I hear it from clients all the time. Well, I never talk about it in the room. They're never around when I'm not talking to you, me, the attorney, or when I'm talking to opposing, or I'm not talking all this. Like, listen, I don't know, maybe this study. So they did this study, the sweat study. Do you know what this?
No.
Okay, I'm going to geek out for a second here because this is like, this lands hard with clients. They did a sweat study, and they did it in college where they could have lots and lots of people under pressured situations at their disposal. So they took sweatshirts, whatever, clothing off of individuals that were doing exams. Very stressful, all of this, right? So we sweat, right? A little, a lot, whatever. We sweat. They took those. And then they took the clothes from individuals that were doing what we call good stress, eustress. So they were doing exciting things or sports that were into it or in flow or out for a walk. And they took all these. And then they had individuals, completely other individuals, sit down and, this sounds really yummy, sniff the clothes. And they monitored all of their blood chemistry contemporaneously with the sniffing, the inhaling of the, I mean, there's hormones, there's all sorts of things, information. Let's say information, because that's really what it all is. The stressed sweat, jacked up stress hormones and all sorts of things in the individuals, the otherwise neutral individuals who were smelling them, and the other sweat did the opposite. So if you think that this isn't coming out of your pores, if that is what you're carrying around in your head, that this isn't coming out of your pores and your kids aren't getting it just because you're not speaking in the same room, you're mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So I think, and sometimes that leads to things because all parents are like, I know what's best for my child. It's my child. It's like, sorta. I mean, yes, it's your child. You sort of know what's best. You know what's best and limited. However, individual parents are rarely educated, and I'll say biased anyway, if they're in it, but educated in the longitudinal studies of how these things affect kiddos in the mix. I mean, study after study after study shows that it's not this family transition of households that is detrimental to kiddos. It's how it's handled.
Mm-hmm.
Can you be the one side? And it only takes one person to change the dynamic and to make that impression on kiddos so they have one stable body. If you are serious about being that person, that's who I work with.
Yes. And please don't ever tell the children why you're getting divorced. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's not don't say anything, the white knuckling. It's age appropriate communication for one thing, right? I listened to a lot of I can't remember her name now. You may listen to, she has a podcast or she interviews on podcasts, and she specifically deals with, and she's a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but she specifically deals with kids 0 to 5 in divorce settings. Mm-hmm. That is her absolute like needlepoint niche, right? And it was fascinating, some of this stuff, and that she works with that. What do you tell them at what ages? Those are good things to find out. How do we talk about things? Because they're going to know stuff's going on, even if they're very, very young. Again, we all have sensed impressions of things. So they do too, but how do you do it well? And parents can't know that stuff.
No, they can't. You need help. And just to I don't know if you're talking about Dr. Karen Milano, but if you are,
yes.
Yes. So I interviewed her recently, and like children.
Maybe it was on yours 5, that I was listening to it.
Well, but I
was listening to a bunch of yours.
Children 0 to 5, you do have to treat so differently than any older child for a variety of reasons. Mostly because, to be a little crass, you can really screw up your kids at that age for a long time because of the way their subconscious is developing in those early years. But like, you are so right in terms of you can be the parent that can really make a big difference in your children's lives going through divorce just by understanding what you should or should not be doing, even if the other parent is doing all the wrong things. You really can.
And it doesn't matter whether you're mom or dad. And it doesn't matter whether you have primary care or not. And that's what individuals like, yeah, but I'm the non-custodial parent. It's like, oh, huge opportunity not to be, and I hate to say it, it alliterates. So we use it a lot, Disneyland dad, but it could be Disneyland mom who doesn't have any rules and just wants to impress the kids and buys love with, being the fun one and all that stuff. Not that. Kids love structure. It's about that solidity, the stability, the self-regulation that your kids can model.
Yeah.
And they don't have to be old enough to articulate it, to get it.
I detest the term non-custodial parent. I mean, I know it's a legal term that we use, but I just don't like it. I've never have, because it just makes one parent feel lesser than. And it's something I think fortunately, I don't know how it is where you are, but I know on the East Coast and almost all the Northeastern states, we're moving more towards a model of a presumption of equal time with parents. And I do feel like, I know a lot of people don't like that, but I do feel like it's taken a lot of the argument out of custody. Because if you just sort of start there, as opposed to trying to argue to get there, it does allow parents to concentrate more on learning to co-parent, as opposed to arguing over where the children should be. And most of the time people argue over what the schedule should be and where the children should be, that they forget about the most important thing, which is learning to be co-parents in two different houses, which is beyond difficult. I mean, as a divorced parent myself, just raising a child in two different households with different personalities and different rules, different environments, is hard enough. If you can't communicate with the other parent in a productive, healthy way, forget it. Your child is going to have so many issues. They just are. And I really feel like what you've been talking to us about is how coaching can help everything. It can help getting you through the divorce process. It can help you after the divorce process. It can help you learn how to just be a better parent through this process, work through your emotions, save money, basically
save money, be proud of your actions.
Yeah.
Right?
You've given probably 30 reasons why you should get a divorce coach. And what I've heard you say more than anything is the earlier, the better. I mean, what I love is I preach all the time about divorce preparation, which I know sounds like a naughty word, but that doesn't mean doing anything untoward, like financially or anything. It's about getting yourself ready to go through the process. And I think what I'm hearing you say is that you advocate for that as well. Like, if you think you're going to go through a divorce, that's when getting someone involved to help you get in the right mindset, get yourself in the right place to start going through the process is the time to do it. You don't have to run out and hire an attorney. Like, I made a decision on Monday, I'm getting divorced. Monday afternoon, I need to have an attorney. Tuesday, I need to file a complaint for divorce. You're just setting yourself up for all kinds of bad things by, rushing through it, as opposed to doing it in a more methodical fashion, figuring out what you need. I love it. Just this morning, I got an email from somebody who's interested in coaching, who just told me that they're in the early stages of deciding to end a very long-term marriage and need some guidance. Not sure that they're there yet in terms of the divorce, but they just want to talk through things. And I love getting those kinds of emails.
Absolutely.
because that is exactly the right time to start talking to a coach, because we can help guide you through everything. I don't know what you do, but I actually help people sometimes even find the right attorney for them based on what kind of process they want. Do they want a more mediation-minded process? Do they want a collaborative process? Or, did their spouse go out and hire like the most ridiculous attorney in town, and you're going to need to find them somebody that can really, at least get it on track by being pushing back enough that they can get the case in the right place. So I really feel like everything you've told us today, Kimberley, is that, a coach can help you in all aspects. It's not just one thing. It's not just three things. It's all aspects of going through this process. And in someone like you can really help them with all of your geeking out knowledge that you amassed. You can really help use all that to help them move on after divorce too. I think it's absolutely fantastic what you're doing. And I love the skilled clarity sort of term that you have going on. I love it. That's just so unique, but I think it says so much. And if you can't guess, you can find out more about her at skilledclarity.com. So nice.
Yeah,
and easy,
I think
right?
if you want relief, skilled clarity is where the relief is. And I think One of the coolest comments, just to add that this really does permeate outwards. And in the case, I had one of the women that I was coaching in the East Coast 3 years into her New York divorce. I don't even know how many zeros were on the tab at that point, but she started working with me, and a few weeks into our working together, and she hadn't told her attorney. She had a very powerful, very expensive attorney at that time. But a few weeks in, they were in an in-person meeting, and her attorney apparently was looking at the screen, and they were talking, and so she's typing away, and she just turned to her, stopped, and said, "Look, I don't know what you're doing. Like, something's different. So whatever you're doing, keep doing it." And she just turned back to her screen and went back to work. And the client, she was an attorney herself. She was a contracts attorney. So she was an attorney who got a coach and was then better for her attorney. So this isn't, I mean, everybody's on the spectrum of benefit here. This isn't that we're saying, look, you're not good at this. Look, you're not. It's like everybody, this is the biggest things you'll go through in life. You will never have a bigger opportunity than now for all of this stuff.
Yeah, never. I mean, and men and women obviously respond to divorce differently. And I find that women have an easier time asking for help. Men usually have a more difficult time. I mean, you see that all the time, just getting a guy to agree to go to therapy or let their children even go to therapy. Like there's something inside. But if you're anyone who's listening to this discussion, you should immediately see all the benefits to.
Well, do you find the word coach, like, guys, because, and this is a huge generalization, of course, the whole coaching, like through sports and athletics and all this, coach sounds like,
Well, it's interesting.
Let's dive in and.
Well, it's interesting because it's in some ways using the word coach is easier for men to sort of understand at least what I like to do, which is help create a game plan, like a basketball coach. I'm helping you draw up the play, but I'm sending you out in the world to actually implement the play. I'm not there to, help you do it yourself. Like, it's a play. And then if it didn't work right, come back, we'll erase, we'll modify, we'll figure out how to fix it. So men can understand that very simple analogy. So in that way, the word coach works, but I'm like you, I hate the word coach. Mostly because I hear it used so much, it makes my head spin. Like, I hear people talk about being, life coaches and all this other stuff. And to this day, Kimberly, I don't know what the heck that means. I've tried to understand, but people all mean it's something different. Really, at its core, what we're talking about is somebody else that's not your attorney, who's not a therapist, no one that's backward looking. Someone's going to help you look forward and help you get through this process and be there with you. You can think of it anywhere from a friend that, you can just, lean on, to somebody who's really going to work detail oriented through everything. Look at emails, look at it's whatever you need. And that's what it's all about. Whatever you need is what a coach is going to help you get through. And if you want to have a better divorce, I promise you will have one if you have a coach helping you through the process. Hands down. And whatever a coach costs you, you will save guaranteed in legal fees. I see it all the time. You will, because you'll be able to work through things with your coach that most people try to work through with their attorneys. And the secret that I've said on this podcast a million times is your attorney doesn't want to hear all of the stories and all these things that you keep telling your attorney. I mean, there are some attorneys like you, Kimberly, that, because you have the coaching background where you're more interested because you want to help them. But most attorneys, they just roll their eyes and they don't want to hear it. And they have to tell you very, very sterile things like, that doesn't matter. That's irrelevant.
It doesn't move the needle. It doesn't move the needle.
And how does it make you feel? It makes you feel like crap because you're like, okay, who do I talk to? Well, guess what? We're telling you who you can talk to. We're telling you that there's somebody out there that's not your friends, that's not your
and we're not the receptacle for your offloading either, though. I think like we're not a dump bucket where you can come and get an ally that's like, yeah, they're so bad. It's like that is not in your best interest. I won't play into it. But what you do get, and I think what is attractive to people is this is safe, confidential setting.
Yeah.
And then it will shock you how far with a skilled thought partner, blind spotter, dot connector, it will shock you how different things can feel. And when things feel different, they become different. And time and time again, that I see clients, when they start thinking in ways they haven't thought and seeing in ways they haven't seen, they start being in ways that they haven't been. And that clients will come, and I hear often that we see things that others don't, and we say things that others won't. That's what you hired us for. And we're not going to apologize for that. I mean, we're not going to beat you up with it either.
No.
But
I wish
look in the mirror and take responsibility.
I wish that there was some way that I could reach through Zoom or through a phone with my arm and just smack people across the face, because that's what I feel like I'm doing half the time as a coach, is just like snap out of it.
Do you have a secret word? I use a secret word.
What?
That like early on our meeting, once they've said that, I mean, one, if somebody thinks their 7 is borderline, but less than a 7 on the coachability scale, I'm probably not going to take them on. If they believe that they're over that and they want to be over that, or I could say they go, oh, you know what? I'm a 5, but I want to be great at this and I will do the work to do it. Okay. I'll take that person. But I always start, and we go around the block a couple times. I'm like, okay, here's what's just happened, to give them examples so they have one really fresh. And I'm like, what would be, I want you to come up with it's nice if it's somewhat humorous word, just a word. Give me a word. You tell me the word, so that when we start going around the block again, I say the word and we breaks, full stop, pivot. Like, we're going to go on to talking. Like, it's going to be my way of not saying, okay, we talked about this before. Okay, I already know these things. Okay, this doesn't move the needle. Okay, I understand this is upsetting and you need to offload. We're not going to go through all that, because that's tick, 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 cha-ching. So what's a word? And usually they come up with something. Sometimes it means nothing to me. It just doesn't matter. But something that's somewhat humorous, so that when I interrupt them, they don't feel like they're being stomped on, not heard, undermined, and that, because that's what I'll hear when people do this and you're trying to say, okay. And they're like, I'm not being heard. And and then they feel all disrespected and that somebody wouldn't listen. And it's like, I'm trying to save you money.
Yeah, well.
And that every time they're doing that, they're creating deeper ruts in these negative tracks that are already in their brain. And we can rewire their brain in better directions. But the more times they go down that path, the deeper those neural grooves are that we're going to work our way out of. And we can work our way out of them. You can watch neural connections grow. Look it up on YouTube and watch the dendrites grow and form as we are creating new neural connections. We can do that work, but we're either making it harder or easier. And they pick the path.
Yeah, they absolutely do pick the path. Well, Kimberley, it's been a pleasure to hear everything, to hear all the stuff that's in your head, because there's a lot of great information in your head. And I'm sure we could continue this conversation for a very long time. If anyone is interested in working with you, how would they contact you, and what kind of programs do you have?
I think the easiest way, I really tailor my programs. One-on-one coaching certainly is at the outset. Sometimes I scale those around if somebody has a case horizon or something going on. Sometimes, we talk and we go, well, if you think a 60 to 90 minute one-off would be advantageous to, just help you kind of get your head on straight for the moment, or reorient, or some expectation management. We can do that. So I really, really, really customize to the individual client. I've also had individuals, such as the group that I did out of the East Coast. And again, I can help people all over the country. It just looks a little different if it's within Oregon, where I'm licensed. But that I was approached to do a group. So that group kind of, came to me, and I can do smallish groups. But skilledclarity.com, that's the easiest way. If you're in Oregon divorce custody, there's a button for that. And we start with an opportunity spotting call. Really, it's a 30-minute gratis call, confidential, non-binding, that we can chat through some things so that we can see where are your personal opportunities, where are your personal entry points, where are you at in the process, and what might be the low-hanging fruit, and then how do we build on that?
Right.
So
good. All right. Well, all of your contact information will be in the show notes. So if anyone would like to contact Kimberley and see how she can help you, please do so, because I can already tell you, I'm sure all of your clients have benefited so much from your expertise. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, John.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.